Hi, I'm KS Garner, and you're listening to the Solo Nerdbird podcast. Today, I'll be speaking with the multi-instrumentalist and producer behind the double album, The Eargoggle Regales, The Eargoggle Revels, accompanied by the comic book anthology, Ezra Gale. Welcome, Ezra.
Hi, great to be here.
Well, thank you for joining us. I believe our mutual friend Patrick Lugo connected us together, so thank you to Patrick for that. But
Right, P. Lugo.
outside, I'm sorry.
P. Lugo or Plugo, I guess I would call him because that's his handle. So,
But outside my introduction, who is Ezra Gale in his own words?
oh gosh, I think that says it. Multi-instrumentalist is right. Songwriter, producer, just because nobody else is going to produce me, so I have to do it myself. So I had to
Mhm.
learn how to do all that. And then and comic book nerd, and that's come out on this latest project, I guess. That's always been like a hidden part of my personality, but now it's out there for everybody to see. No hiding it anymore.
So how did this project come about? So I guess is the Irrigado Regales and Revels, is that like was there a theme to it that you wanted to do, or is like you made the double album and then you finally wanted to join your love for comic books together with it?
It's kind of yes to all that actually. It was sort of both of those things. I ended up writing a lot of songs, partly because this thing happened that you may remember in March of 2020 and I just like had a free schedule. Well, I actually didn't. I have kids, so I didn't have more time. I actually had less time than I ever had before. But somehow I had no gigs. I had no, nothing to do all day, basically. No outlet for my creative energy. So I ended up writing a lot of songs and finishing a lot of songs that I had lying around just because I needed to keep working and do something, and
Mhm.
ended up with this batch of songs that was originally going to be two albums. So kind of the Regales side and the Revels side were originally going to be two albums. And then it just seemed like, wait, this is sort of like a bigger project, and it's like, why not go for broke and make it. I've never done a double album before, so decided to do that. And then as far as joy, but they're individual songs. It's not like it's not one story. They're all like separate sort of characters and songs and in themselves. But then sort of in that process, and partly in thinking about, okay, how am I going to release this? How am I going to get people to notice it? What am I going to do with all this stuff? I started kind of noticing that like the theme of the songs was really that there was a lot of characters and there was a lot of stories in the songs, more so than other things I've done in the past. I just started feeling like, there's one of the songs is about a lighthouse keeper, and another one is about a guy who shuts himself in his house and doesn't want to come out, and another one's about like a small time drug dealer who falls in love with one of his clients, and like things that I could see visually. And then I just started thinking like, okay, I've got to print the lyrics somehow because they're sort of important to what these are about. And then I was like, well, what if the lyrics are a comic book, and I had no idea how to go about doing that because I'm not an artist myself. Um, so that just began this whole project of kind of finding comic book artists and just, individually kind of going through and looking at people's work and compiling it all into this book. So it kind of took over my life for a little while, for sure.
Uh-huh. I love how I kind of think the same way as well, how it kind of like unraveled from just being the music to now you thinking how, okay, printing out the lyrics. Well, it doesn't have to be like it was um with the CDs when you would get a booklet and it would have the
Right.
lyrics in there. You can um finally combine your two passions together, at least the two of them that can go together, which is comic books and the
Hmm.
music, and have them printed out like that. And then now you have to find a way, like, how am I going to get the find collaborators with, that will, I guess, make that could bring my vision to life versus what I did sonically with the music. So it kind of
Hmm.
like unraveled from one thing to the next. Because you
Yeah.
had this one idea, and then it's like, oh, well, what if we take it a step further and step
Yeah.
further and step further?
Right.
So how was it finding the collaborators for the comic book part.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. You're exactly right. It is an idea that kind of just snowballed. You know, it was kind of, okay, I got my songs. Now I should make an album, put them out, and then it's like, then it became, and that would have been fine. But then it just sort of like grew and grew, and like, oh my God, now it's this huge project. So I really, like I said, I had no idea what to do. I have a high school friend named Colin Devonshire, who is a comic book writer now. He has this great zombie apocalypse series called By the Time I Get to Dallas. I reached out to him on Facebook, and I was just like, dude, here's what I'm thinking. How do I find these people? Like, who are they? Where do they hang out? You know? And so he introduced me to a few, and looking at their portfolios and looking at their work. And I would just, I was looking for anybody, just work that I liked. I kind of was looking for not typical superhero comic book work. Which I quickly discovered, like the vast majority of comic book artists are that like typical kind of Marvel, DC, like, bulging muscles on the guys and big cleavage on the girls and like, tight outfits. And these songs are not about superheroes, and they're just about people that, I mean, people that I know don't look like that, like superheroes. I don't know who you hang out with, but those aren't my friends. So anytime I saw somebody with art that I thought was kind of distinctive and unique and a little different, I would kind of save their work in a file. And then at a certain point, I just started going back and contacting people and explaining the project to them. And then through that process, sometimes I would kind of ask, hey, do you have any more recommendations for me? And everybody had, oh yeah, I work a lot with this guy. He's amazing. You got to check him out, and so that through that process, I ended up with, I think, all in all, I think there's maybe 14 or 15 different artists. And, I mean, everybody had a really distinct and different style, which was definitely what I was going for. Because the songs are different songs. I wanted the comic book to have more of an anthology feel, so that it's like a collection of different artists instead of one through, one artist or one style all the way through the book. So I wanted it to kind of change radically, like with each story that you're reading in the comic, because the songs are so different. Also, the musical styles that I go through are kind of diverse. So I wanted to have that look in the comic also. So
yeah, when I had read the comic first before I listened to the music, and a lot of them did, or I should say pretty much all of them did match with your lyrics, and I can kind of hear them in my head as I was reading it, not musically, but more of like a spoken word type almost throughout. And as I was reading some of them, I was like, oh, I can definitely hear this as music. So when I listened to the double album, I was like, okay, I knew that I would like this one, like The Killer, and oh God, there was some other ones. I think it was is it Breathe Earth and Stone? Is that one? The Garden I liked.
Oh, great.
What was another? Smash.
Oh, cool.
Tiny Island. I liked how that was kind of like a break in between. Like it was definitely a break in the comic, and it was a break in the music.
Right.
So I like that.
Oh, great.
I don't know all the names. I just kind of listened to it multiple times.
Oh, great.
It feels like one of those albums that you have your favorites initially, and then you come back to it later, and it's like, oh, I don't even remember this song. Now I like it the most out of all of it. That's how I felt when I listened to it.
Well, that's all great to hear. I mean, it's so interesting to me also, because part of my intention, sort of with the art of the whole thing, by art I mean just the entire project, like, was that it could be experienced as a book, without the music, or it could be experienced with the music without the book, or together. Like, I kind of want it to work on each level, and I don't know if it does, but it's really great to hear that, like, you read the book first without the music, and that was cool, and then the music brought another element to it. That's sort of kind of in the back of my mind through this whole project, was this kind of, I wanted to see what would happen if you just like mix these two things together, mix visual art with music. Like, how do you do that? What does it mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like we know what happens if you mix music and film. It's like a music video, or you mix music and theater, it's a musical. But music and art, like what is that? Like an art kind of, it's static. It's at one point in time. It sits on a wall or in a book. Like, how do you mix that with music? What does that mean? So it kind of brings you as the listener or the viewer into the experience, because you get to choose. Like, you get to choose. Do you look at the art first, without the music? Do you do them both at once? Do you just listen and then, do you think about them separately? Like, that's all valid. It's like, I don't know what the answer is, but I think it's kind of fascinating to me that people are having these different experiences with it.
Yeah, and also like the fact that there is no real theme is kind of based off of the characters themselves within that song. So it's almost like when, I don't know if you've ever felt like this, but I definitely do all the time when I listen to music and then I imagine what the video is going to look, the music video is going to look like. So
Yeah.
that's kind of, I guess, what the artists were thinking when they read your lyrics in a way, because you kind of just let them have free reign
Yeah.
over what to do as far as use their creative style to depict what they thought the song would look like visually.
Right. And that was very much the point of the whole project. Really, was I just sent each artist the demo, whatever state the song was in. Some of them were more finished than others when I sent it to them, and the lyrics, and I was just like, go for it. And some of them would ask me quite like, okay, what is this about? And I would say, okay, well, this is what I was thinking when I wrote the song, but and this is the story I have in my head, but it's up to you. You can do anything you like. Some of them wanted a little more direction than others. I discovered, like the guy who did the first one I sent out was The Garden, which ended up being the first track. And this guy, Luis Santamarina, is this amazing Argentinian artist. I sent him this song, which is kind of about this guy who, it was kind of about me at the beginning of the pandemic, just not wanting to go outside and just like shutting my house. I didn't tell him a thing. And, a couple of weeks later, I get back this comic that's just this incredible, like, he's got this like hobbit, mole person stuck in his little hobbit hole, being invaded by these little people. And it's like beyond anything that I ever could have thought. But at the same time, it was completely right on with the vibe, like the character of what I was feeling when I wrote the song. And a lot of them are like that. Some of them, they were just like, a couple of the artists were kind of like, what's going on? And I would tell them, well, this is one of them, Leave No Trace. I was like, well, this is kind of like it's like a romance that's kind of like being in a really fast car, and it's really dangerous, but it's also really awesome. That's what I was thinking. And so the guy, went on and did that and drew a really fast car and a couple in it, which is fine. But other people, the woman who did For Too Long, Aida Silkoja, she's Finnish. She was another one where I didn't say a word and just got back this like fantastical comic with an owl flying away from a tree, which is abstract but also kind of beautiful, and just to me it fits the music also. So that was kind of cool. And I got, I discovered through this whole process, because you were asking about meeting the artists and finding them, that I think it was pretty unusual for artists to be told like, hey, this is all up to you. Just do your thing. Just be creative. Because I felt like everybody responded really well to that. They were like really excited. And I think that normally comic book artists are kind of given a script, and to be like, panel one, our hero stands on top of the building looking down at a mugger, on the street. Panel two, he flies through the air. Panel three, he socks the mugger in the face, stuff like that. And where it's like very kind of constrained, like, it's up to you to draw it, but this is what's supposed to happen. So to go from that to just being given a blank canvas, basically, I think was kind of exciting for a lot of people.
Yeah, I've never done comics, but from a graphic designer's perspective, I need to know the details of what it is that you want me to do, because we can't continue to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, especially if
Right.
it's virtual now. Whereas if we were
Yeah,
meeting
right.
in an office, it'd be different, or we had a team of people, it'd be different.
Yeah.
But this is you giving them the demo and just letting them reign free, which is something that we're not really used to. Again,
Yeah. Right.
we so used to going back and forth with writers or whoever the patron may be.
Hmm.
So it's that too, but maybe something completely different and that they've never really experienced before, at least not professionally.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's also frightening. And I know what that's like. I mean, the experience of a blank page is just kind of, it's intimidating, and it's, in any art form, like if you're a writer or a musician or an artist, to just be told like, okay, do something, is much harder than to be told like, okay, you need to draw this guy in this outfit with, flying through the air towards this, building. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's much easier. That's like, and I feel the same way writing songs. When I sit down and I have nothing, and I'm going from zero, it's much harder than if, sometimes I work with other people and it's like, or I do like a songwriting challenge and it's like, okay, write a song about the rain, yesterday. And it's like, okay, here we go, so I get that there's a little bit of like fear about that. I have that too, but it was definitely interesting to see how different people responded to that.
Mm-hmm. So, with this new experience that you have with combining your love of music and your love of comics together, um, do you have any advice that you can give to other creators that you wish someone would have told you when you first started?
It's a good question. I mean, I think the main thing was involve other people as much as you can. I mean, as far as like, like what I was talking about, like finding other artists, I really had no idea how to do that. If I had just done that all on my own and Googled people, I don't think it would have worked at all. I think I think contacting other people and explaining what you're doing and like, hey, do you have any ideas? I kind of made a habit of that. Pretty much everybody I was talking to through this process, I kind of, at some point was like, hey, you got any recommendations for me? Do you know anybody who would be interested, that you could recommend or would be interested in this? Or, when it came time to do the Kickstarter, which is a whole nother thing, I went on a whole, anybody I knew who had anything to do with the Kickstarter, I kind of hit them up and was like, what can you tell me? What do you, that question, like, what do you wish you knew when you did this?
Mm-hmm.
It's just invaluable to get other people involved, I think. That's the main thing. I mean, especially since I was embarking on something, comic book artist, that I had no experience with myself. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, so I think that was the main thing for sure.
Well, after everything, now that everything is done, um, can you think back, I guess, to when it all first started? How did you, I guess, keep it together? Right. So, like, you're doing the music, you're looking into doing a comic book anthology. Is this is March 2020 when the pandemic it just hits pretty much right at the pretty much the beginning of it, at least here in the States. And then your father, as you mentioned, so maintaining a household, taking care of your kids, taking care of yourself. So how have you been able to manage your, I guess, mental well-being throughout all of this?
Well, yeah, that's definitely the $1 million question these days. I don't know. I mean, on the face of it, it seems impossible because there's all these different things going on. But at the same time, I'm the type of person that I need deadlines in order to do anything. I've always been like that. Like if I have no deadline, I sit around until, the last minute or whatever. So so I think in a perverse way, having this new constraint on my time, which was for me was that I was now in charge of childcare and homeschooling like all the time, and not having a creative outlet like the gigs, the shows that I was playing or whatever all disappeared. I think that perversely kind of helped me motivate to use the time that I did have, which for me was like after bedtime, and I would stay up and working on stuff, just because that was the only time I had. I would be like, okay, I've got, an hour and a half, 2 hours right now. I got to sit down and jam on this, I got to do this.
Mhm.
Um, Whereas, you know, I think in the past, if I had all day, I might not have been as productive. I mean, it's kind of funny how that works, but, and then the other thing is at a certain point, I had a whiteboard. I had to like, in fact, I think it's right here. Oh yeah, there, I erased it now. It's on, I'm on to the next, this is my next batch of songs, but like for a while, that was like what I lived by. I had that on the wall and I was just like, okay, here's this song, here's this artist, this is what it needs, you know, this is what the recording needs. I need to get, you know, the drums on this, I need to get this one, I need to mix this one, and then the art, I need this, and you know, this guy can't do the lettering, so I need to get this one, and all that. It helped me to see it visually. I mean, there's no way to keep that in my head really. So that was another kind of just organizational thing. And plus the thing with the whiteboard is it's so satisfying when you like do something and then you wipe it off.
You wipe it off,
or
yeah.
put a check next to it. It's just like, yes, you know.
Uh-huh.
So that was an extra motivator also, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you know, it's been really interesting to me through this whole pandemic and now whatever stage we're in now, I don't know, just seeing kind of the art that has been created, because we all went through this period of sort of isolation, like to varying degrees, but like, you know, pretty much everybody's normal life kind of stopped and changed. And it's been really interesting to see. I know, you know, a lot of my musician friends are putting out albums that they've been working on over the last couple of years that are probably very different than what they would have done normally. You know, like they're maybe a lot of, like you said, a lot of stuff is virtual. So there's been a lot of collaborating, you know, like I did on this record. I sent the tracks that I had to some people who played their parts on them and then put them back. And, you know, in the past, maybe we would have like all been together in the same room.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good and bad both ways. I mean, there's definitely a benefit to having all the musicians in the same room, but at the same time, there was like a different kind of focus and creativity, I think, that was that came out doing it this way. And then also collaborating with these. I don't know if I would have had this idea to do the comic book really. I mean, I don't know. It's a good question, but I think part of it was spurred by just kind of like being isolated and feeling like, okay, I need something big to work on, or I'm gonna lose my mind. You know, like I gotta focus on something. I got to put some of my creative energy into something, and it's got to be like something that keeps me going for like a while.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So yeah. So
Well, yeah.
that.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm cutting you off.
No, I know. I just it's something I think about a lot. Like, what would this have looked like if you know, if there were no pandemic and I mean, my life would look very different.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if this project would have. I definitely had the idea while we were all in lockdown and while we were kind of, you know, changing our daily routines and being isolated and all that. So I kind of feel like, you know, this is probably not an idea I would have had normally.
Yeah, normally, like you said, because of the pandemic, all the gigs and stuff dried up. So you probably would have made the album, mixed it, and then, you know, did whatever you have to do. I don't know how people do music,
Yeah.
but did all that, and then, you know, went on tour, did your gigs, and just promoting it then. But, you know, with a lot of people, what a lot of people have done during the height of the lockdown was that they went and explored these ideas that they've always had, because now they have the time and
Right.
I guess the creative space to finally explore their ideas they've always wanted to do, or revisit something that they kind of had to put on the back burner because of, you know, life had happened.
Yeah.
So they had the time to, I guess, go back into it. So now that you have the time to kind of like sit with it, now these other ideas are coming to you, whereas before you probably wouldn't even have entertained it because life is moving right now, whereas
Right.
in
Yeah.
2020 it wasn't. Life was not moving at all for a lot of people.
Right.
It was so in isolation. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think that's pretty much what happened with you and pretty much everybody else that wanted to revisit or explore their creativity, which they never had the space to do before.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I think that's one thing. I mean, on a huge, we could talk forever about it on a huge, like, societal level. Like, there are things that I hope we take as a society from this experience. I think there were good parts of it, not the parts about everybody getting sick and dying and all that, but like the parts about us sort of valuing our own, time and our own family life maybe, and just like there are things that you kind of come to realize when we're more isolated than if you're in your day-to-day busy life. But I know for me personally, I want to hold on to, I don't know if it's call it ambition or just like this kind of desire to make projects be a little more interesting and kind of combine different things and not just put out an album of music. I hope I hold on to that, I guess, as we get back to whatever normal is now, you know?
Uh-huh. Well, my last question for you, Ezra, is what is your idea of success? So I asked that because as creators, if we're not getting regular paychecks from a full-time job or making consistent revenue from our art, we're considered failures or we'll consider ourselves failures. Many of us will put our dreams and projects on the back burner or give them up altogether, as I mentioned before, because this career can be highly intimidating and competitive. So what is your idea of quote unquote success?
Well, I've always had a pretty basic, I can't say always. Okay, when I was, in my 20s and I wanted to be a rock star and I was in bands, I went on tour and lived that life, and that was great and fun, but I didn't get famous, and that's fine now. And I didn't make $1 million, and that's also fine now. But I've really pretty much always had the idea that what I really want to do is make enough to sustain whatever my next project is. And now that I'm now that I have a family and it's more of a balancing act for sure, because I can't just ignore the need to pay rent and pay a mortgage and take care and send the kids to school and all that the way I could when I was in my 20s and I was renting a cheap room somewhere and I just needed money for beer and whatever,
Mm-hmm.
But I think that calculation hasn't really changed for me. Like, I think that that I want to find the time and the resources to continue doing this. Why, I can't really say. I like the artistic impulses. I don't know if something I can kind of explain. I think that anybody who's a creator of any sort, be that music or art or writing or graphic design or anything can be creative, really. There's just kind of a drive to do it. It's just something that that I feel better when I do, and more fulfilled. So I know that I need to keep doing that, and I'm constantly looking for ways to keep that going.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that fed into actually the idea for this project initially was kind of like, I've thought for the last like many years, like you said, you don't know how musicians do it. Like, it's the whole landscape has changed and gotten so interesting over the last few years, just because anybody can put an album out now. It's very easy. Like, it used to be like you had to get signed to a record label and then you had to go through this whole thing. But now pretty much anybody, like, we could record this conversation right now and put it on Bandcamp and call it an album, and it would be out. We could tell everybody, hey, we made an album. And it's like, great, but so what? Like, why? There's so much of that like, why should you listen to that? So
Mm-hmm.
I've always felt like, okay, you got to do something to stand out. Like, whether that's they're all songs about tugboats or something, or you combine it with a comic book, or you combine it with something else. I feel like I'm constantly looking for, like, call it a gimmick or call it whatever, but I'm constantly looking for a way to kind of make this stand out. And I use that as kind of creative inspiration, sort of, instead of saying, I don't want to do all this extra stuff. I just want to record my songs and put them out and that's it. I know that some people feel like that, but I kind of feel like, okay, what are the possibilities here? Like, what can I do? What could be interesting? What's unique? Like, what's going to catch people's eye? And that kind of inspires me to sort of look at other things. And that was definitely part of this,
Yeah, it sounds like instead of saying what could go wrong, what could go right in a
Yeah.
way. Because some people say, like you said, they don't want to be bothered with all this extra stuff. I think it's more of an insecurity than anything than it is than it is being ambitious, how ambitious the project may be. So someone looks at something like this, I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of, comic book creators who would love to add music and have that be another element to their comic book, but it's very ambitious. So they think more
Right.
of what could go wrong, or the extra money they have to spend, or the extra time they have to spend, the connections, this, that, and the third. So they
Yeah.
don't even bother with it. But like I said, it's more of a what could go right versus what could go wrong type of
Right.
situation.
Yeah, and there's a risk in that. And I mean, and to get back to your original question, like for me, it's all part of me feeling like I just want to sustain this, career, this kind of the next project. So I want to make sure that motivates me to put more into this one to make it. My definition of success is not like selling 1 million copies of this. I know that's not going to happen, but I would like it to, pay for itself ideally. And then so that I can and maybe a little bit extra so I can take that and put it into the next one. If anything more happens, of course, that's great, but I don't really expect that anymore. And I kind of, that's what I'm looking to do really, is just kind of like sustain it moving forward. And that ambition, doing a project, like if there's a comic book creator who's thought about combining it with music, I say go for it. Because the other element that I discovered, which was in doing a Kickstarter, was that it seemed to me, when you have a big project like this, like something that really kind of stands out, like it's not just a comic book, it's not just an album, that really catches people's eye, and it makes it kind of an easier sell. It's kind of like, hey, it's not like, hey, check out my album, like join my Kickstarter for my album. It's like, okay, that might be cool. But when you say, hey, I got this album and it's a comic book, then people are like, oh, really? Huh? I haven't heard that before. That was my experience. And so I think, aiming big, it's definitely intimidating. It's a risk, but I think it pays off just on that level of like getting people's attention, which is really something that's important,
Mm-hmm. Well, is there anything else that you want to touch on about the Eargoggle Regales, the Eargoggle Revels as a whole that have been missed? Do you plan on doing any gigs anytime soon or touring?
Yeah, I keep getting asked that. At the moment, it's not really a band, except for me. In the past, I did have a crew in the city in New York, and we played some gigs. This was 3 or 4 years ago now, so long before this material. But since this album was done so remotely, and I played most of the instruments on it with some guests. It would be a big project. I would like to do it, but it's just kind of, my focus has been on making this recording sound really amazing and then doing this whole package with the comic book. So I haven't really put anything into that, but it is on the back burner for now. I would like to do that. At the moment, so I mean, my next project, which is kind of related to this one, actually, I kind of started working on these two things together, and then just decided to go for this double album first, in terms of finishing it. But the other one is a rock opera, or concept album, and that's going to be with a graphic novel, meaning that it's going to be the same artists all the way through, because it's the same story. So that one, actually, Patrick Lugo, our friend, is one of the artists on that, and then Olive Mitra, who did the Breathe with the Earth and Stones in this book. The two of them are working on this book, which the music is almost pretty much done. The art is, getting there. So I don't know when that's going to be, but that's kind of the next thing that I'm going to like pour myself into and turn my life upside down for, is doing that. And it's kind of an extension of this. I kind of decided to do this one with all the different artists, just because, I don't know, it was more exciting to me to like dive into that and just start out by meeting all these different people and getting a whole bunch of collaborators involved. And now this one, I think we want to focus on just doing like one story all the way through with the soundtrack. So then that's going to be the next thing. It's called Box of Tapes. And that's going to be.
Yeah, that sounds amazing, actually, because from what I've heard, I've loved so far, and then what I've seen, I've loved so far, and then a rock opera, a graphic novel. So I'm already thinking of what it would look like visually, and then you hear the music in the background. That'd be great. And I know like vinyl was one of, I guess, the rewards for the Kickstarter. And
Yeah.
I guess it's still up like on the Bandcamp as merch.
On Bandcamp. Yeah, I I brought props here so I can show you. See, here's the double album that folds out to these this beautiful art.
Oh yeah, that's nice.
This one is Z Hunty, and this is Fiona Oakley, and then this is Patrick on here, and then it comes, and then this is the book that I don't know if you got this but anyway, this one is Louis, and it's this comes in the thing, and it's a flip book. So this is record 1, and then this is record 2. So you read it on the side. So yeah, the vinyl. And the vinyl is expensive. I mean, it's expensive to do. Takes forever because of the way the world is now, and it basically makes no sense to press vinyl anymore. And it's just something that I think is really cool, and so I keep doing it, and I'm going to keep doing it. So
yeah, I think a lot of people look at vinyls as like collectors. I know it's the same thing with tapes. The tapes are coming back.
Right.
Yeah, I think the music would sound great on vinyl. I think there would be having that echo in the room. I think, and then I just kept thinking when I was listening to it, I was like, this would be great live. That's what I was asking about if you're doing any gigs. But I think you're on the West Coast, right?
I'm in the East Coast. So
you're on East. That's even better.
New York, a little bit north of the city.
So yeah, like I said, a tape, and because I have a tape player in my car, I don't have the aux thing, so I don't have a choice. Cool. And I think vinyl would sound great with that echo in the room. So yeah, I mean, it sounds great digitally as well, but I think it would sound a lot better like if you're in a room full of people and it's like muffled a little bit, and it's kind of just almost like that echo that you hear.
Oh yeah,
I think that would be great.
Yeah, I think you're right. You're inspiring me. I got to put a band together, play this stuff. A bunch of the musicians have been asking me, like a couple of the drummers that are on this, they're like, when are we playing this live, man? Come on. So yeah, I think it'll happen. I think the world is just like starting to get in gear again, and we'll get back to that. So I'll put it together. And I love the way the vinyl, I mean, I love records. Don't get me wrong. I'm not, I just, from a creator perspective, sometimes I wonder, like, what am I doing? It's quite an expensive project, and everything involved with them. But the reward of it is just so cool and they sound great. I listen to records all the time, so this one sounds great. I have to say, I actually didn't sit down the way that it's sort of intended, like, following along with the comic book until recently, when I have a 9-year-old daughter who, she had the comic book, and she was like, let's listen to the songs, I said, okay. And we put them on, and like, she was following along with the comic book, and it was pretty cool, even though I've heard the songs like a million times each, of course, because I wrote them and I've been working on them for a year and whatever. But it was a pretty cool experience to kind of just put the record on and like sit there with the comic book. It was nice.
Yeah, I mean, to sit there and then listen to it with your daughter too, so that brings a whole new, perspective, new experience with her.
Yeah. Just the part about, there's a couple that are a little bit not really for kids, so I was kind of like, let's hurry through this one. Don't ask me any questions about that, honey.
All right. Well, again, I want to thank Ezra Gale for joining me here today to promote his double album, the Eargoggle Regales, the Eargoggle Revels, accompanied by the comic book Anthology. I highly recommend our listeners to consider giving Ezra's music a listen, share, and or purchase the comic book as well if they can. All of Ezra's socials and website will be listed in this episode's details for those who are interested. Again, I am KS Garner, and you have been listening to the Solo Nerdbird Podcast. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.